thank you for joining with me. We are reading out of A Course in Miracles, complete and annotated edition. We are in chapter 22, The Function of the Holy Relationship, and this is section 2, Christ Reborn into His Ancient Home. We are reading with the Course Companions group and reading commentary at the end of each section by Robert Perry. Dear God, if left to my own devices, my perception will be skewed. I surrender to you everything that I think and feel. God, please take my past, plan my future. Send your Spirit to redeem my mind that I might be set free. May I be your channel, God, and serve the world. May I become who you would have me be, do what you would have me do, go where you would have me go, and say what you would have me say, and to whom, dear God. Thank you. Amen. Christ reborn into his ancient home. Let reason take another step. If you attack whom God would heal and hate the one he loves, then you and your Creator have different wills. Yet, if you are his will, what you must then believe is that you are not yourself. You can indeed believe this, and you do. And you have faith in this and see much evidence on its behalf. And from where, you wonder, does your strange uneasiness, your sense of being disconnected, and your haunting fear of lack of meaning in yourself arise? It is as though you wandered in without a plan of any kind, except to wander off, for only that seems certain. Yet we have heard a very similar description earlier. Footnote 3, text 20, section 3. There is a stranger in him who wandered carelessly into the home of truth, and who will wander off. This is a description of the ego, the strange idea that is not you, but that you think is you. But it was not of you, and yet this strange idea, which it does accurately describe, you think is you. Reason would tell you that the world you see through eyes that are not yours must make no sense to you. To whom would vision such as this send back its messages? Surely not you, whose sight is wholly independent of the eyes which look upon the world. And if this is not your vision, what can it show to you? The brain cannot interpret what your vision sees. This you would understand. The brain interprets to the body of which it is a part, but what it says you cannot understand. Yet you have listened to it, and long and hard you tried to understand its messages. You did not realize it is impossible to understand what fails entirely to reach you. You have received no messages at all you understood, for you have listened to what can never communicate at all. Think then what happened. Denying what you are and firm faith that you are something else, this something else which you have made to be yourself became your sight. Yet it must be the something else which sees, and as not you, explains its sight to you. Whew! So, you have received no messages at all you understood, for you have listened to what can never communicate at all. Think then what happened. Denying what you are, and firm in faith that you are something else, this something else which you have made to be yourself became your sight. Yet it must be the something else which sees, and, as not you, explains its sight to you. Your vision would, of course, render this quite unnecessary, but if your eyes are closed and you have called upon this thing to lead you, asking it to explain to you the world it sees, you have no reason not to listen, nor to suspect that what it tells you is not true. Reason would tell you that it can't be true because you do not understand it. God has no secrets, He does not lead you through a world of misery, waiting to tell you at the journey's end why He did this to you. What could be secret from His will, yet you believe that you have secrets? What could your secrets be except another will that is your own, apart from His? Reason would tell you that this is no secret that need be hidden as a sin, but a mistake indeed. Let not your fear of sin protect it from correction, for the attraction of guilt is only fear. Footnote 4. The point of this sentence seems to be that our fear of sin shouldn't impel us to hide it, for this protects it from creation. Something in us wants to protect sin, because we are attracted to the guilt it induces. But the reward we are counting on guilt to bring us is only fear. So the very fear that leads us to hide sin is actually the only payoff that sin delivers. Why then protect it from correction? Here is one emotion that you made, whatever it may seem to be, and it is the emotion of secrecy, of private thoughts, and of the body. This is the one emotion that opposes love and always leads to sight of differences and loss of sense of sameness. Here is the one emotion that keeps you blind, dependent on the self you think you made to lead you through the world it made for you. Your sight was given you along with everything that you can understand. You will perceive no difficulty in understanding what this vision shows you, for everyone sees only what he thinks he is and what your sight will show. You will understand because it is the truth. Only your vision can convey to you what you can see. It reaches you directly without a need to be interpreted to you. What needs interpretation must be alien, nor will it ever be made understandable by an interpreter you cannot understand. All of the messages you have received and failed to understand, this course alone is open to your understanding and can be understood. Let me repeat that. Of all the messages you have received and failed to understand, this course alone is open to your understanding and can be understood. This is your language. You do not understand it yet, only because your whole communication skill is like a baby's. The sounds a baby makes and what he hears are highly unreliable, meaning different things to him at different times. Neither the sounds he hears nor the sights he sees are stable yet. Yet what he hears and does not understand will be his native tongue, through which he will communicate with those around him and they with him. And the strange, shifting ones he sees about him will become to him his comforters, and he will recognize his home and see them there with him. So in each holy relationship is the ability to communicate instead of separate reborn. Yet a holy relationship so recently reborn itself from an unholy relationship, and yet more ancient than the old illusion that it has replaced, is like a baby now in its rebirth. Yet in this infant is your vision returned to you, and he will speak the language both of you can understand. He is not natured by the something else you thought was you. He was not given there, nor was received by anything except yourself. For no two people can unite except through Christ, whose vision sees them one. Think what is given you, my holy brothers. This child will teach you what you do not understand and make it plain, for his will be no alien tongue. He will need no interpreter to you, for it was you who taught him what he knows because you knew it. He could not come to anything but you, never to something else. Where Christ has entered, no one is alone, for never could he find a home in separate ones. Yet must he be reborn into his ancient home, so seeming new and yet as old as he, a tiny newcomer, dependent on the holiness of your relationship to let him live. Be certain that God does not entrust his Son to the unworthy. Nothing but what is part of him is worthy of being joined, nor is it possible that anything not part of him can join. Communication must have been restored to those that join, for this they could not do through bodies. What then has joined them? Reason will tell you that they must have seen each other through a vision not of the body, and communicated in a language the body does not speak. Nor could it be a fearful sight or sound that drew them gently into one. Rather, in each the other saw a perfect shelter, where his self could be reborn in safety and in peace. Such did his reason tell him. Such he believed, because it is the truth. Here is the first direct perception that you have made. You made it through awareness older than perception and yet reborn in just an instant. For what is time to what was always so? Think what that instant brought, the recognition that the something else you thought was you is an illusion. And truth came instantly to show you where your self, capital S, must be. It is denial of illusions that calls on truth, for to deny illusions is to recognize that fear is meaningless. Into the holy home, where fear is powerless, love enters thankfully, grateful that it is one with you who joined to let it enter. Christ comes to what is like himself, the same, not different, for he is always drawn unto himself. What is as like him as a holy relationship, and what draws you together draws him to you. Here is his sweetness and his gentle innocence protected from attack, and here can he return in confidence. For faith in one another is always faith in him. You were indeed correct in looking on each other as his chosen home, for here you willed with him and with his Father. This is your Father's will for you and yours with him. And who is drawn to Christ is drawn to God, as surely as both are drawn to every holy relationship, the home prepared for them, as earth is turned to heaven. And now we will read Robert Perry's commentary on this section. Day 263, Section 2, The Christ Reborn into His Ancient Home. I think we do feel like the person described in the first 4 paragraphs of this section, but we don't draw from that feeling the same conclusion that Jesus does. According to his description, we peer through our eyes upon a world we just can't figure out. Things constantly happen for no rhyme or reason. Good people fail while bad people thrive. Life proceeds like normal, and then a natural disaster strikes and abruptly turns normalcy into tragedy. The people we love are 100% real, but in an instant they can be gone, apparently becoming unreal. None of it seems to make any sense. In this strange place we don't seem to make much sense either. Who are we? What are we doing here? What is the purpose of our existence? It feels like we are a feather floating senselessly through a senseless world. We seem to be a stranger who aimlessly wandered in and will one day just as aimlessly wander off. Why, we wonder, is God doing this to us? And what is the secret behind the existential mystery? This description fits our experience to a T, does it not? But it doesn't fit us. This is not who we are. These are not our eyes, and this is not our world. What this actually describes is not us, but our ego. Our ego is the stranger that looks through eyes of its fleshy home, and then uses its brain to try to understand the world thus shown. Our ego is the floating feather. The fact that we feel like that feather and that we are so caught up in using our brain to figure out this crazy place shows just how completely we believe that we are the ego. That sense of self we carry around inside, that's the ego. We have another way of seeing, which the Course calls vision. Vision does not use our body's eyes and is not interpreted by our body's brain. It is so natural to us, it fits us so well, that we don't need to decipher it, as if we are cracking some secret code. We understand it instantly, effortlessly, and completely. It bypasses the eyes and the brain and goes right in. Actually, Jesus says the Course's teachings are like that too. Just as vision is our natural sight, so these teachings are our native tongue. Now, obviously, they don't seem that way. My brain never works so hard as when it's trying to understand the Course. Yet, this is where Jesus' metaphor of the infant comes in. Right now, I'm like an infant. I hear my native tongue, but I don't yet speak it. I have vision, but I'm very new to it, and it's not yet functioning reliably. In other words, as an infant, my faculties of hearing and seeing are still new, still developing toward the smooth, consistent functioning they one day will attain. There is hope in the image of the infant, for infants, of course, do grow up. According to Jesus, I'm in this hopeful place because my brother and I joined in a holy relationship. Again, we need to think back to Helen and Bill's joining in June of 1965. What allowed them to join? It was that they saw each other through vision. On that pivotal afternoon, they looked at each other, and rather than seeing a combatant who threatened their fortress, in each the other saw a perfect shelter where his self could be reborn in safety and in peace. Have you ever seen that in someone else? Not because you had just met the person and were projecting all your fantasies onto her, but because you knew her shortcomings and saw that perfect shelter in her anyway? This is what happened with Helen and Bill. Each of them saw the other as the perfect, warm, and safe manger in which the Christ in them could be born. This was vision, their first real instance of it. Here, the first direct perception that you have made. Here is the first direct perception that you have made, and this allowed Christ to be reborn into his ancient home. If you have such a joining, imagine that the infant Christ has been born to the two of you, and as we speak is sheltered under the roof of your relationship. If you really had the baby Jesus living in your house, what would that be like? Wouldn't you expect to, in a sense, grow up with him? Wouldn't you imagine that as his innate innocence and wisdom began to show, they would change you? Wouldn't you expect his way of seeing the world and his disposition toward reality to rub off on you? That, says Jesus, is exactly what happens in a holy relationship. The infant Christ is born into the relationship, and that infant carries in himself your sleeping vision, which now awakens as he grows, and speaks to you your native tongue, which you now learn and remember. If we have a holy relationship, then, Let's not let it become to us routine and anxiety-ridden, just another rickety shack in a homeless world. Let's see it as Jesus does in this section, as the perfect manger, the ancient home into which Christ himself has been reborn, and in which he will teach us everything we have forgotten over the eons of separation. Thank you so much for joining with me, reading with the Course Companions, Day 263, Section 2 of Chapter 22, Christ Reborn into His Ancient Home. I love you. Thank you for joining.